here is the actual latest when it comes to developments in Pennsylvania. As I say, that race is too close to call. Trump was up a significant number of ballots. Now the thing is basically a dead heat. Same thing is happening down in Georgia, where briefly this morning Joe Biden leapt into the lead. Military ballots still have to be counted. Presumably those will split in favor of President Trump, you would think. There's some provisional ballots that still have to be counted. So a lot of these states are still up in the air. There's a lot of controversy over the last 24 hours because the Trump campaign filed a lawsuit. And now the appellate Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania has sided with Team Trump, rejecting a deadline extension for absentee voters to provide missing proof of identification. And so basically, the Democrats wanted people to have like 3 weeks or a month or some extended period of time to show that they were who they said that they were. And that did not materialize. According to the RNC, in a huge victory for election integrity, the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania sided with the RNC and Donald Trump in the challenge to Secretary Bukvar's unlawful deadline extension for absentee voters to provide missing proof of identification. The court has enforced the proper statutory deadline and ordered that those ballots be segregated and not counted. RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel said, the RNC is doing everything in our power to ensure these kinds of issues are resolved and the letter of the law is followed. Right? So, again, all of this is worthwhile. The letter of the law should be followed. Okay, also, a Pennsylvania court did mandate access to poll watchers. Okay, according to DailyWire.com, Tim Pierce reporting, a court in Pennsylvania ruled on Thursday morning GOP observers must be allowed to watch ballot counting across the state. Apparently, they ruled that GOP observers could watch the ballot count from 6 feet away, but they had been pushed out to like 16 or 100 feet away. The court order allows GOP observers to stand closer. Previously, they'd been using binoculars. The Trump campaign, of course, had preemptively declared victory in Pennsylvania yesterday, suggesting that the number of ballots is too big for Biden to overcome. We'll see whether that is, in fact, the case. Okay, now, as to the actual claims of election fraud in Philadelphia that have been made at this point, some are somewhat substantiatable, some are really not. They should all be investigated, as I keep saying. So President Trump said last night that partisan Democrats have allowed the ballots to be received 3 days after the election. We think much more than that. Well, election officials will be counting ballots that were received between 8 p.m. on Election Day and 5 p.m. on Friday. And again, that is the big issue, right? Because that preliminary ruling suggested that as long as there was no countervailing evidence to suggest that the ballots were cast before Election Day, they have to be counted. So unpostmarked ballots could be counted. Okay, that's crazy. That's crazy. And that will end up back in the Supreme Court. And presumably there will be a ruling on that. Now, is that tens of thousands of votes? Probably not. Is it hundreds of votes? Could be. Could be. And I'm sure that all of them will be for Biden. Okay, President Trump also suggested that they are counting these votes in Pennsylvania without any ID whatsoever. As the Philadelphia Inquirer says, Pennsylvania requires people voting in person to provide proof of identity if it is their first time voting at that precinct. That's also required from anyone registering for a mail-in ballot. Apparently, the Pennsylvania Secretary of State has advised that ballots should not be counted if a name on a mail-in ballot cannot be verified or if identification was not received. And this is where the Trump campaign came in and they said, okay, you don't get a week or a week and a half to provide ID. Like, you should have done it at the time. It is also true that the Trump campaign was pointing out that Republican election observers were being forbidden from viewing the vote count closely in person. Now, city lawyers for Philadelphia say the GOP representatives observing the counting could see the entire setup of the canvassing room and could watch every detail of the counting process. A lawyer representing the Trump campaign did tell a judge there have been representatives of the campaign observing the counting process. The city solicitor, Marcel Pratt, said in a statement, many representatives of the Trump campaign have been given access to the convention center throughout the entire day, and since Tuesday, just like observers from other campaigns, the board has set up a location from which candidates and party representatives, potentially in large numbers, can easily view the room without impeding the operation. That is according to the city solicitor. But again, why would you be filing a lawsuit if it weren't the case that you were actually being prevented from seeing what in the hell was going on? This led to a bit of a confrontation between Team Trump and Philadelphia officials. Now, it is unclear whether the Philadelphia officials are stonewalling, whether they're violating the law here. So take all of these videos with a grain of salt, because very often these videos are slightly out of context. One of the allegations I saw here is that the court order being shown was in order to remand back to the local court for a final order, and that the election officials here were waiting for the final order. In any case, here's what that sounded like in Philadelphia yesterday.
I can assure you that they're not violating it under any...
The order is currently in effect.
They're not violating it
You guys
under
had
any
8
interpretation.
attorneys. I think it was 8 attorneys enter your appearance on this. I don't understand why 8 attorneys need to evaluate this order. I did it all by myself.
Okay.
It says that no later than 10:30 today, you're to follow the election code, and my people, my clients, representatives, are to be within 6 feet of the process.
Okay, so that was former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is a lawyer for the campaign. Bondi said, "We plan on entering that building right now and legally observing. If there's one illegal vote cast, it takes away from the great men and women of Pennsylvania who came out and issued a legal vote." And then she updated later. She said, "This is a joke. They moved the fence up, but moved the ballot machines back. This is offensive, and obviously we should change that particular standard." So that is where things stand right now. Okay, so obviously these sorts of controversies are not good for the American public, and we need to know all of the details of them, and they should all be fully investigated.